Is your HOA always this fair when your driveway gate creaks shut? Chain grinding and a 3 a.m. notice slaps the metal. They chained my driveway, blocked deliveries, and smiled like it was scenic standards. Anyway, my neighbor muttered, if they locked you, who's next? Inside the sheriff's office, a county map and an old plat deed hit the table with a paper stamp thud. Still, neon glare showed Cedar Road was never theirs. Next week, that same deed would decide who really controlled the only road up to their precious hilltop clubhouse. I live in a quiet street, so when I opened my front door and heard engines idling, I knew something was wrong. Cold, Colorado air hit my face as I stepped out onto the porch. The sky over Redwood Hills was that pale, hard blue. You only get in early fall when the nights are colder than the mornings know what to do with. I rubbed a hand over my jaw, took one step toward the railing, and froze. Down at the bottom of my sloped driveway, the gate was closed. That part wasn't strange. The bright silver chain wrapped around it, though, that was new. Same with the fat brass padlock hanging in the middle like a threat, and dead center taped at an angle across the bars was a sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve. Even from the porch, I could read the top line. Violation notice, Redwood Hills. Lakeside. HOA, SAR 12-07, made 03-17 a.m., 3:17, I said under my breath. They came while I was asleep. My doorbell camera chirped a soft beep behind me as it registered the movement. The sound felt almost sarcastic. A brown UPS truck sat half up on the shoulder hazards blinking. The driver leaned against the side arms folded, trying not to look annoyed and failing. Parked just beyond him, perfectly straight, was a white SUV with the HOA logo on the door. Two people in matching polo shirts stood by the rear bumper with clipboards. And in front of my gate, like she was inspecting a crime scene she'd ordered herself, stood Pamela Cross, HOA president, clipboard queen, sunglasses on even though the sun was barely over the trees. I walked down the driveway, boots squeaking on the frost. The smell of wet pine needles and cold dirt sat heavy in the air. Halfway down, I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the camera. The icon went red. Morning, the UPS driver called. You, Ethan? Yeah, I said. What happened? He jerked his chin toward the gate. She told me I can't go up there. Says your driveway's under access review. I've got 3 boxes with your name on 'em baking in the back. That right, I said. Pamela turned at the sound of my voice. Good morning, Mr. Cole, she called like this was a neighborhood bake sale. I'm glad you're here. We've issued a notice. I saw it, I said. Hard to miss the part where you chained my driveway shut. It's not your driveway we're acting on, she replied. It's the approach. The association has authority over approaches within the scenic corridor. One of the board members behind her nodded, eyes fixed on his clipboard like there might be real power printed on it. Pamela, I said, stopping a few feet from the gate, you don't own my driveway. We were close enough now that I could see my reflection in her sunglasses. Her jaw flexed once. We control the approach, she said. That's well within the scenic corridor authority. The board voted last month. Then show me the deed, I said. Show me the document where anyone transferred this gate, this gravel, this strip of asphalt to the HOA. We have bylaws, she said. Covenants. They're binding. Burgers are binding, I said. Bonds are binding. Covenants are rules. A deed is ownership. You got one. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She tapped the notice with her pen instead. You're in violation of HARTAR 12-07, she said. Obstructive visual elements within the scenic corridor. Multiple vehicles, construction materials, and equipment visible from shared community sightlines. Behind me, the door to the house next door creaked open. Jim, my neighbor, stepped out onto his porch in flannel pants and a faded Broncos hoodie. He squinted down the hill. "They lock you out, Ethan," he called. "Looks like it," I answered without taking my eyes off Pamela. Jim shook his head. "If they dare lock your driveway," he said, voice carrying clear in the cold air. "Imagine what they'll do next." The UPS driver chuckled once, then stifled it when the nearer board member shot him a look. Pamela held her clipboard tighter. "We've informed you several times," she said. "Letters, emails. There's been no meaningful correction on your part. What you sent were suggestions, I said. Paint colors, hints about covering trailers. This," I gestured at the chain, "was not a suggestion. It's an escalation," the board member muttered. I turned my phone so the screen faced the notice. The camera autofocused, capturing the wording, the timestamp, the HOA logo at the top. My heart was beating faster than the situation deserved, but that's the thing about lines. Once someone crosses one, you don't know where they'll stop. "Here's my problem," I said. "That truck can't get up my hill. Emergency vehicles can't get up my hill. No one can reach my front door unless you say so. And the only thing you've pinned that on is a paragraph in a handbook you printed yourselves." "The community has rights," Pamela said. "We have to maintain standards. If we don't, property values slip. People talk. The board is responsible. So am I," I said. "For this land, for this driveway, for every inch I've paid taxes on for 7 years. I stepped closer to the gate. The chain was cold, even from a few inches away. My doorbell camera chimed again behind me, little ding, as it caught my back and the cluster of HOA faces at the bottom of the drive. "Sir," the second board member said, voice flat, "do not touch HOA property. Tampering with the lock will result in additional fines." I put my free hand on the padlock. The metal burned my palm with leftover night chill. The gate rattled slightly, a hollow iron sound that carried farther than I expected. On the porch above us, Jim leaned against his railing, watching like he'd paid for a front row seat. He lowered his voice, but not enough. "Sheriff truck is coming," he said. Sure enough, over the top of the pines, I could see a flash of white and blue through the trees, slow-moving, coming up Cedar Road. It was still a minute out, but word traveled faster than lights in a town this size. Pamela must have seen it too. Her posture stiffened. "Mr. Cole," she said, "if you argue this further, the board will escalate." My phone buzzed softly in my hand as the live clip from the doorbell camera popped up, same chain, same notice, same stance she'd taken 5 minutes earlier when she thought no one was watching. The tiny speaker on the porch echoed her words back in a tinny, delayed loop. "If he argues, we escalate." The camera icon on my screen glowed red, recording every second. I let the padlock hang, stepped back 1 foot, and looked from the chain to the approaching truck, then back at Pamela's sunglasses. "Then I guess we'll see," I said. The gate stayed closed. The camera kept rolling. The sheriff's office always smelled like burnt coffee and old paperwork, but that morning the scent hit harder. Maybe because I walked in carrying a notice that shouldn't have existed. Sheriff Briggs met me halfway across the lobby, boots thudding on the laminate floor. He had the notice in his hand. My notice folded once crease-sharp, like he'd already read it too many times. He didn't waste a second. "They locked your driveway without jurisdiction," he said. That was the welcome. I followed him into a small side room used for interviews and Friday lunch storage. A humming neon tube flickered above us, casting everything in a washed-out blue. I sat at the metal table. Briggs paced. He flicked the notice open with 2 fingers. "Your driveway is fully yours," he said. "HOA has no deed claim. They've never had one." His voice had that sheriff tone, flat, certain, dry as gravel. "Pamela thinks otherwise," I said. Briggs scoffed. Pamela thinks bylaws outrank the Constitution. She's wrong about that, too. Before I could reply, the door clicked open and Deputy Howe stepped inside. He carried a manila folder like it was fragile evidence. "Found what you wanted, Sheriff," he said. "Pulled the old 2017 record." Briggs jerked his head. "Good. Close the door." Howe shut it and leaned back against the metal. Briggs stabbed a thumb at the notice. This scenic corridor authority nonsense, they used that same phrase in 2017. Tried to claim control over driveway visibility. County attorney slapped them down. How hard, I asked. "Red ink," Howe said. "Underlined twice." That said enough. Briggs dropped the notice onto the table. It made a sound like a flat-handed slap. "They're bluffing," he said. "They hope you fold because most folks do." I let out a slow exhale. "What's actually true, then?" He pointed to the door. "Come on. Map's out here." We stepped back into the main office past the old coffee pot burbling on its last legs. The corkboard beside it held flyers for missing cats and a chili fundraiser. Normal, small-town noise. But the far wall, that was different. A laminated county map stretched nearly 6 feet across all bright lines and parcel boxes. Some clerk must have loved highlighters yellow-green, red-blue, each marking something official. Briggs motioned me closer. "You want truth," he said. "Truth's right here." He tapped a thick green border surrounding our subdivision. "This is the HOA boundary," he said. "Every square foot they actually control is inside this line." I nodded slowly. "But your place lot, 14B, sits right here." His finger slid just outside the line. "Just barely out of their jurisdiction. They know that. They hate that." He moved his hand a few inches to the right and tapped a blue rectangle labeled Redwood Hills Clubhouse. "And here's their pride and joy," he said. "Clubhouse. Events, meetings, the whole circus." Then he traced a thin gray strip of pavement running toward it. "See this road?" he said, tapping the line lightly. "Private Cedar Road. Paved before the HOA existed, maintained irregularly, and most important," he paused for effect, "it's the only road that reaches the clubhouse." I leaned in until my shadow crossed the map. The only one I asked. The only one Briggs repeated. No back entrance, no second lane, no fire access trail. If this road closes, nobody gets to their clubhouse. Not staff, not members, not their board. Howe opened his folder. "Here," he said, sliding out a thin photocopy. 2017, Notice 14. HOA petition to claim Cedar Road as common access. County attorney denied no ownership basis. That was the exact wording. Briggs pointed at the underlined phrase. "This means they tried to claim the road once, failed, and never recorded anything after. And now they're locking driveways instead," I said. "That's what people do when they want control but don't have paperwork," Briggs said. I moved closer to the map. The contour lines bent around the hills like ribs. The green HOA boundary wrapped tight around their streets and cul-de-sacs. But Cedar Road sat outside everything like a limb they needed but didn't own. I pulled out my phone. "Mind if I take pictures?" "Go ahead," Briggs said. "Public record." I snapped a photo of the clubhouse segment, then zoomed in on the road. A faint label read, "Private Cedar Road, Paved Access." An arrow pointed directly from the county road to the clubhouse door. From this angle, the truth was too clean to argue with one road in, one road out, and none of it belonged to the HOA. "They're playing with fire," I said. "Yeah," Briggs said, "and they're throwing sparks on your property." Howe nodded. "We'll email you copies. Paper trail matters." "Paper always matters," Briggs added. "Paper doesn't lie. HOA often does." I stared at the gray line again, thin, vulnerable essential. A lever disguised as asphalt. Briggs folded his arms. "Listen," he said quietly. "You keep old paperwork. Closing packet surveys. Anything the title company gave you when you bought your place." "Somewhere in my workshop," I said. "Back drawer." He nodded once. "Check your workshop drawer. You might have something older." "What kind of something?" "The kind that turns leverage into certainty." I looked at the map one last time. The clubhouse sitting like a blue island at the end of that narrow gray road. "I'll check," I said. "Good," Briggs answered. "'Cause the HOA just crossed a line. Time you found the lines they can't cross." I pushed open the workshop door and stepped inside, letting the cold air settle behind me. The bulb above the bench flickered once before holding steady, casting a warm gold over my tools and the scattered sawdust. Briggs's voice still echoed in my head. "Check your workshop drawer. You might have something older." The bottom left drawer of my bench had always been the junk drawer, tape measures, dull blades, and every manual I didn't have the heart to toss. It stuck halfway when I pulled it, then gave way with a protest. Inside, beneath a dead flashlight and a stack of tax envelopes, was a folded sheet of heavy paper. I lifted it out slowly. When I unfolded the corners, the workshop went quiet. Even the buzzing light seemed to wait. A county plat map from 1992 sprawled across the bench. Yellowed edges, crisp black lines. And across one of the easements in sharp printed text, Private Cedar Road, non-HOA. A thin blue line traced the road up the hill toward the clubhouse. Next to it, in firm, handwritten block letters, sole vehicle access to clubhouse. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't rumor. It wasn't Briggs' hunch. It wasn't neighbor gossip. This was the foundation stone, the thing the HOA had hoped no one would ever rediscover. I took out my phone and snapped a picture, then another with flash. The ink gleamed faintly. My phone buzzed. Rhodes flashed on the screen. Old school rancher. Owned land here generations before the HOA ever printed its first bylaw. I answered. "You got timing. You find the map?" he asked. His voice carried that gravelly confidence of someone who'd outlived several boards of self-important neighbors. "I did," I said. "It's marked. Private Cedar Road, non-HOA. And someone wrote sole vehicle access. Looks like your dad's handwriting." "That's him," Rhodes said. He wrote like he carved fence posts, straight lines, too much pressure. HOA tried to buy that road cheap back in the early 90s. Offered him what he called beer money. He told them no. They got offended. I traced the blue line with my thumb. So the only road they used to reach their clubhouse belongs to whoever owns that strip Rhodes finished. Always has. Why didn't they fight harder for it, I asked. "Oh, they tried," he said. "County shut them down more than once. Paperwork doesn't lie. But folks with clipboards often think they can outrun history if they talk fast enough." The workshop bulb buzzed again. Outside, a jay squawked from the pines. "They're circling again," Rhodes continued. "Left a voicemail last week. Wanted to revisit the possibility of a road transfer. When HOA folks start using soft words, they want something real bad. They want to cut me off," I said. "You're not wrong," he replied. My phone beeped. "Incoming call, HOA board office." I pulled it back to check the ID. Rhodes chuckled. "Let me guess they're calling you now?" "Yep. Don't answer," he said. "They never call to help, only to feel out how much you know." I let it ring. It clicked to voicemail. "They'll mention maps," Rhodes said. "They always freak out when paper surfaces." He wasn't wrong. "Rhodes," I said quietly, "are you thinking of selling the road? Or part of it to them?" "No," he answered. "To you, maybe. You've kept to yourself." You fix your own problems, and you don't use the HOA to pick on others. That counts for something around here. How would it work, I asked. I'll email an offer tonight, he said. Clean transfer. County recorder will take it. HOA won't see it coming until the ink dries. I swallowed. What's the timeline Friday, he said. Close of business. They're getting impatient. I can feel them sniffing around. If you want the road, you take it now. I stared at the map again. The blue line. The handwritten note. The knowledge that the only road they depended on could slip out of their hands for good. They just left a voicemail, I said. Bet you a steak dinner it says something like, "We hear you're reviewing old property documents." His tone sharpened. Listen, Ethan. HOA power is like fog. Looks thick from a distance, but it disappears when you shine a light on the actual deeds. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Send the offer. I will, he said. And Ethan. Yeah, once you own that road, you won't need to shout. The paper will speak for you. The call ended. I folded the plat map carefully, but not before snapping one last picture. A quiet certainty settled over me. Prop number 2 wasn't broken yet, but, like any old piece of truth, it was pressurized waiting. And Friday was coming fast. Folding chairs, stale coffee, and a projector on a cart, that's how big decisions look in our neighborhood. I sat halfway back in the Redwood Hills clubhouse, close enough to see the projector screen, far enough that Pamela couldn't pretend I was with her. LEDs hummed overhead. Pamela Cross stood at the front, blazer-sharp mic in hand. Thank you all for coming, she said. Tonight we'll be voting on an update to our scenic corridor map. She clicked the remote. The projector gave a soft beep and a slide appeared. A simple map of Redwood Hills filled the screen. Streets labeled green blocks for protected views. And there, in bold HOA Blue Cedar Road, glowed as if it had always belonged to them. In the corner, a caption read, Scenic Access. Routes HOA managed. In the row ahead of me, one board member leaned toward another. If we claim the road, now, he whispered, he can't stop us. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I slid it out low. A new email preview flashed. From Rhodes. Subject deposit received if you still want to proceed. The 1992 plat map flashed in my mind. Private Cedar Road, non-HOA, and his father's note, sole vehicle access to clubhouse. At the front, Pamela lifted a laser pointer. As you can see, she said, circling the blue strip, this reflects the reality that the HOA manages all approaches to community amenities, including the clubhouse. Tonight's vote formalizes that. I raised my hand. She paused, then forced a smile. Yes, Mr. Cole. Where's your deed? I asked. A low murmur moved through the chairs. Pamela blinked. I'm sorry. You're coloring Cedar Road blue and calling it HOA managed, I said. So where's the deed transferring that road or any part of it to the association? A board member cleared his throat. Our covenants clearly state, covenants aren't deeds, I cut in. They're rules for what you own, not shortcuts to what you don't. Either you have a deed or you're just drawing on a wall. Pamela shifted her weight. This is a mapping correction, she said, not a title hearing. The HOA has always had authority over the scenic corridor. The motion is to approve the scenic corridor expansion map as presented. Expansion, I repeated. So we agree you're reaching for more than you had. My phone buzzed again, a text from Rhodes. Funds confirmed. You can still walk away. Or not. Pamela's eyes flicked toward my phone. Mr. Cole. She said, if you have objections, you may submit them in writing. Right now, we are proceeding with the vote. I stood. My objection is simple, I said. You're trying to vote yourselves a road you don't own. You were denied that road on paper years ago. That isn't management. That's pretending. Pamela took a small step forward. "Are you challenging the HOA?" she asked, voice sharper. Heads turned. The map glowed behind her cedar road, shining in borrowed blue. "No," I said. "I'm correcting a 30-year mistake." Then the treasurer raised his hand. "We should proceed," he said. Other hands went up, some quick, some slow. The secretary gripped her clipboard pen, hovering. "I'm going to step out," I said, turning toward the aisle. "Looks like you're voting on a picture. I've got real paperwork to answer." I walked past the chairs, past the table of cookies and cooling coffee, and pushed through the clubhouse door into the hallway. Out here, the lights hummed softer. An exit sign washed the tile in red. I leaned against the wall and opened Rhodes's email fully. "Deposit received if you still want to proceed." It read. Funds had hit escrow. If I confirmed by reply, he'd sign the transfer documents Friday at noon. If I backed out, he'd send the money back and keep the road. Through the closed door, voices bled together. Words like uncooperative and example slipped out and faded. The HOA secretary approached a notepad hugged to her chest. She glanced back at the meeting room, then at my phone. "He knows about the road," she whispered. "Pamela. She's terrified you've seen something she hoped stayed buried." "Good," I said. I looked at the screen again. The cursor blinked in the reply box. Rhodes had given me until Friday. The HOA had just colored my lifeline their shade of blue. All it would take was one short line to turn that map inside out. We proceed. Friday. The county title office smelled like new paper and old decisions. I stepped inside at 9:58 a.m., breath still fogging from the cold outside. Rows of metal file cabinets lined the walls like silent judges. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, steady, pale, unforgiving. Attorney Jeffries waited for me at the counter, sleeves rolled up, pen tucked behind one ear. "Ethan," he said, tapping a folder, "I've prepared everything for the transfer." My pulse steadied. This was the moment Rhodes had warned me not to hesitate through. A clerk led us to a glass-topped table. I sat the vinyl chair creaking under me, and Jeffries opened the folder. Purchase agreement, escrow receipt, transfer deed. Pages crisp, warm from the printer. He slid the first document toward me. "Once recorded," he said, lowering his voice, "you will own the only paved road to their clubhouse. Literally, the only one." The sentence landed like a weight on the table. I signed. My pen left a clean black line across the signature block, Ethan Cole. It looked steady, more steady than I felt. Jeffries stamped the page. Received. 10:42 a.m. County Title Office. The sound of the stamp echoed across the room, sharp enough that the clerk at the next desk looked up. Minnie Cliff. A man in a Navy HOA windbreaker pushed through the front door. He scanned the room, spotted us, and walked toward the counter. "Excuse me," he said to the clerk. "I'm here to review any filings involving Cedar Road. The HOA needs to confirm jurisdiction before any unauthorized activity proceeds." The clerk didn't even blink. "You need an appointment," she said, "and a written request." "I'm on the HOA board," he insisted. "This involves our scenic corridor." Jeffries cut in. "Then you should know scenic corridor has nothing to do with deeded ownership." The board rep frowned. "We have authority to examine documents." "Not here you don't," the clerk said. "Title filings aren't public inspection until after they're recorded. Come back tomorrow." The man opened his mouth again, closed it, walked backward, glaring at me like I'd stolen his headlights. Then he left. The door hissed shut behind him. Jeffrey's eyebrow lifted. "That was fast. They're watching every move you make. So are we," I said. He slid the next form forward. Escrow confirmation. My phone buzzed. A call from Rhodes. I answered quietly. "Yeah. Deposit cleared. Rhodes said. Bank confirmed it. You're officially holding the line. Once the deed hits county records, there's no backing out on their side. They can stomp and shout, but paper is paper. Any sign they're trying something, I asked. Oh, they're doing their dance, he said. Got an email from Pamela this morning asking if I'd consider a joint management arrangement for the benefit of community cohesion. When they get poetic, they're lying. I couldn't help a dry laugh. Figures. Finish the filing, Rhodes said, before they try to clarify something they don't own. I hung up and placed my palm flat on the table, grounding myself. Jeffries pushed the deed toward me. The real heart of the whole thing. Prop number 3. The title block read, Deed, Transfer Strip, 14B. Cedar, Road Access, Easement Owner of Record. New, Ethan Cole. There was a small blank rectangle waiting for my signature. This is the one that changes the temperature of the whole neighborhood, Jeffries said. Once this record's HOA can vote on 10 different maps and it won't change a thing. I took the pen. The workshop map. The sheriff's words. Pamela's chain on my driveway. Roads saying they were circling. All of it tightened into a single point. I signed. A long, deliberate line. Jeffries didn't wait. He pressed the second stamp. Received. 10:57 a.m. Deed Office. The clerk took the documents to the scanner. The machine chirped, the light slid across the page, capturing every fiber of the paper. She returned a moment later with a manila envelope. Your temporary copy, she said. Recorded copy will be available after processing. I opened the envelope. Inside was a clean scan of the deed, my name printed in bold beside the word Owner, Micro Cliff. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt the pressure shift from my shoulders to theirs. Jeffries clasped his hands. You understand what this means, right? He asked. You didn't just buy dirt. You bought leverage. You bought the only way their board reaches that hilltop clubhouse, and you bought it legally, cleanly above board. Outside, a car door slammed. Someone hurried past the office window, navy jacket, HOA logo on the sleeve. The same man checking his phone, pacing. They're not taking it well, I said. They don't have to take it well, Jeffries replied. They just have to accept it. The clerk returned with a stamped payment receipt. Congratulations, she said. Transfer accepted. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail notification from an HOA number. Jeffries nodded at it. Ignore them until the ink dries. I slipped the scanned deed back into the envelope and sealed it. So I said, what's next? Jeffries leaned back, lowering his voice. Next step? He tapped the envelope with one finger. Enforcement. The word felt cold, precise, inevitable. I looked out the window toward Cedar Road, the same road they'd painted blue on their projector last night. The same road they'd assumed was theirs by attitude alone. Not anymore. I held the envelope closer. The twist wasn't coming. The twist had just been recorded. By noon, the wind had picked up enough to push dry leaves across the asphalt in slow, scraping arcs. I drove down Cedar Road with the deed envelope beside me on the seat, the same envelope that had changed the temperature of every board meeting for the next decade. At the base of the hill, where the road narrowed before climbing toward the clubhouse, the HOA had set up a barrier. 2 orange posts, a chain, and a plywood sign painted in rush-hour red letters. Corridor closed. HOA authority. A small crowd of residents gathered on both sides, phones up recording. Someone muttered, "They're really doing it." Another whispered, "This'll end up online before dinner." Pamela stood in the center, arms folded, blazer flapping in the wind. To her right was the HOA board attorney, a man carrying a thick black binder and an expression that looked borrowed from a parking ticket. I pulled over, stepped out, and walked toward them. Gravel cracked under my boots. My pulse was steady, not calm, just steady. Pamela lifted her chin. "Mr. Cole," she said, each word clipped. "For safety reasons, the scenic corridor is closed to unauthorized vehicles." "Minnie Cliff, unauthorized," she repeated, staring hard. I looked at the barrier, then at her. "This is private Cedar Road," I said. "It's not part of your scenic corridor." The attorney opened his binder. "The HOA maintains authority over all approaches to community amenities," he recited. "Blocking access to the clubhouse violates our bylaws and disrupts community traffic expectations." A gust of wind flipped several pages in his binder, scattering them slightly. He caught the stack awkwardly. "That binder," I said, "have the deed in it." He stiffened. "This isn't a title hearing." "Exactly," I said, "which is why a plywood sign doesn't outrank a recorded deed." Another car pulled up. Sheriff Briggs stepped out, hat low, jacket zipped against the wind. He walked toward us with a pace that said he already knew how the next 10 minutes would go. "Pamela," he said, nodding, "your board asked for my presence." "We did," she said. "Mr. Cole is trying to monopolize community access." Briggs scratched his chin. "By driving on a road he just legally bought murmurs from the crowd." Pamela's eyes widened. "That purchase is under review." "Nope," Briggs said. "I checked the recorder's office on my way here. It's stamped and filed. Cedar Road, Strip 14B, is owned by Ethan Cole." He glanced at me. "You got the papers." I handed him the envelope. He opened it, squared the pages against his palm, and began reading loudly enough for every phone camera to catch. "Private Cedar Road," he said. "Owner of record Ethan Cole. This is the only road giving vehicle access to the Redwood Hills Clubhouse." The HOA attorney swallowed. Pamela's jaw set so tight the muscle twitched. "Your binder," Briggs continued, "doesn't have a deed contradicting this, does it?" Silence. The attorney thumbed through pages as if a deed might magically appear between meeting minutes and landscaping invoices. But he didn't speak. Residents leaned in. Phones held higher. Briggs closed the deed packet. "Barrier down," he said. Pamela blinked. "Sheriff, the HOA has authority only on what you own," he said. "This isn't yours." Her voice sharpened. "This is a community road." "It's Ethan's road," Briggs replied. "If you keep a barrier across private property, that becomes a legal issue, and not the kind you solve with a vote." The attorney lifted a hand. "We request time to review." "That's not how property works," Briggs said. "Take it down." The barrier posts shook in the wind. One resident stepped forward, filming Pamela in tight focus. Another whispered, "This is the first time anyone stood up to her." The HOA board members turned to each other quietly, panicking in fragments of half-sentences. Finally, Pamela exhaled sharply. "Fine," she said. "Remove it." Two board members began unhooking the chain, their motions robotic, embarrassed. The plywood sign clattered to the ground and rolled a few inches before the wind pinned it against a tire. The chain came loose. The barrier swung. Cedar Road opened like a gate in a story that had been locked too long. Micro-climax. Briggs handed the deed back to me. "You did this the right way," he said. "Paper beats posture." I nodded. "Thanks for being here." "Wouldn't miss it," he said. Pamela stepped closer, keeping her voice low enough that only I and the nearest phones could hear. Her smile was thin, brittle. "This isn't over," she said. "Cliff?" I looked at the now open road climbing toward the hilltop clubhouse, the one access point they could no longer pretend to own. "No," I said, "it isn't." The wind carried the words up the hill, scattering them like leaves across a road that was finally undeniably mine. The first hole I drilled into the post sounded like a verdict. Thunk, thunk. The bit chewed into treated pine at the junction where Cedar Road met the main street just before the grade climbed toward the hill and the clubhouse. The morning wind pushed dust across the shoulder. Cars from town rolled by slow drivers rubbernecking whenever they sensed trouble that didn't involve them yet. I braced the ladder with one boot and lifted the new sign into place. White metal, black letters big enough to read from a moving car. Private Cedar Road permit holders only. I slid the bolts through, then tightened each nut until the sign sat flush against the post. Thunk, thunk. Down on the gravel, a couple of neighbors watched. One of them, Jerry from Elm Court, shook his head with a crooked grin. "Poetic," he said. "They locked you first." "Yeah," I answered. "They wrote the script. I just read the fine print." From the top rung, I could see up the hill. A line of SUVs and sedans idled near the clubhouse entrance waiting to come down. They hadn't seen the sign yet. At the bottom of the hill, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into the shoulder. Briggs stepped out hat-low hands in his jacket pockets. He glanced up at the sign, then at me. "You went ahead with it," he said. "I recorded the deed," I replied. "Now I'm posting the boundary." "Clear enough," he said. I climbed down, boots crunching gravel. "Any trouble yet?" he asked. "Give it 5 minutes," I said. Right on cue, a dark SUV rolled down from the clubhouse and slowed when the driver spotted the new sign. Pamela stepped out, blazer, sharp sunglasses on. Behind her, 2 HOA board members opened their doors. A second car pulled in behind them. Cedar Road at the junction turned into the world's smallest traffic jam. Pamela marched toward the sign. "What is this?" she demanded. "A sign." I said. "Don't play cute," she snapped. "You can't restrict community access like this." Briggs leaned against his cruiser watching. I nodded at the metal. "Private Cedar Road permit, holders only," I said. "Matches the deed on file. If someone wants to use this road, they ask for permission. Same rule you tried to apply to my driveway, only this time it's actually legal." Her jaw tightened. "Cedar Road serves the entire association. The clubhouse is a community asset. And this road is a private asset," I replied. "I just happen to own both the problem and the solution." The HOA attorney arrived in a third car binder in hand. He jogged the last few steps. "Mr. Cole, this is unacceptable," he said. "You can't unilaterally choke access to a community facility." I pulled a folded copy of the deed from my jacket and handed it to Briggs. "You locked my driveway," I said evenly. "So I bought the only road you need to reach your clubhouse." A murmur rippled through the small crowd of residents now filming from the shoulder. Someone whispered, "He actually said it." Someone else said. Finally, someone fought back. Briggs unfolded the deed and read, voice clear over the wind. "Private Cedar Road," he said. "Owner of record Ethan Cole. This is the only road giving vehicle access to the Redwood Hills Clubhouse." He glanced at the attorney. "You got anything that beats that?" he asked. The attorney scanned the lines, flipped the page as if a miracle might be printed on the back. His mouth opened once closed, then stayed there, caught between protest and reality. "There may be equitable arguments," he muttered. "That's not a deed," Briggs said. "That's wishful thinking." Behind them, the line of HOA cars grew. Drivers leaned out their windows, staring at the sign, at Pamela, at me. A couple of residents parked along the county road, phones raised. One of them called out, "So, who do we talk to about a permit?" The HOA attorney's voice dropped. "If we enter without permit," he said quietly, "he could claim trespassing." "Could," Briggs replied. "Would. And I'll have to honor it." Pamela stared at the sign as if she could burn the letters off with her eyes. Her board members shifted uneasily, glancing between the deed, the sheriff, and their stalled cars. One of them whispered, "We should back up." Another, "We can't be seen ignoring a deed on camera." Slowly, the first SUV put itself in reverse. Then the second. One by one, HOA vehicles eased back from the junction, turning to find parking on the county road instead. Prop number 3 deed posted enforced hole. Pamela stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I and the nearest microphone could catch it. "You made us dependent on you," she said. I met her eyes. "No," I said. "You did that when you locked the wrong gate." The wind pushed a wave of dry leaves across Cedar Road, swirling them around our feet before they scattered up the hill toward a clubhouse that suddenly felt a lot farther away. By late afternoon, Cedar Road didn't look like a flashpoint anymore. The barrier was gone. Folding tables lined the gravel shoulder loaded with crock-pots and foil pans. String lights ran between the new wooden posts at the junction so the bulbs hung low over the asphalt like a soft archway. A portable speaker played old rock. Kids chased each other with plastic footballs weaving between lawn chairs. Every loop they made, they passed under the white metal sign, "Private Cedar Road Permit Holders Only." Today, blue painter's tape held an extra sheet underneath community use. Granted by owner HOA. Authority none. The kids tagged the post like home base laughed and ran off again. What had terrified the board now looked like order, not threat. I stood near the edge of the group with a paper plate in hand, watching smoke curl off a grill. The air smelled like charcoal sauce and dry leaves. Briggs wandered over burger in one hand, soda in the other. "Never thought I'd see a block party on a piece of road that caused this much paperwork," he said. "Had to christen it somehow," I replied. He nodded toward the sign. "You sure you want it open like that? I didn't buy the road to lock out neighbors," I said. "I bought it so people who live here aren't scared of whoever holds the clipboard that month." He chewed, swallowed, squinted up the hill. The clubhouse roof showed through the treetops, smaller now that everyone knew how weak its claims had been. A couple of former board members walked past on the county shoulder. No HOA polos. One gave me a tight nod. The other didn't quite look my way. I let them pass. We'd all learned enough for 1 year. Near the sign, Jerry from Elm Court clinked his cup with a plastic fork. To Ethan, he called out. For buying the road they thought they owned. Laughter rose around him. I shook my head. "This isn't about owning it," I said. "It's about making sure nobody can weaponize it again." An older woman from Oak Drive added, "Feels good to finally see someone stand up with more than just a Facebook rant." People murmured, "About time and should have happened years ago." Briggs stepped a little closer to the center of the crowd. "All right," he said, quick update from the boring side of the law. Conversations tapered off. Someone turned the music down. He pointed at the sign. Officially, he said, HOA has no authority over private Cedar Road, the sole access to their clubhouse. None. They can drive it like anyone else if Ethan lets them. But they don't control it, can't ticket on it, and they sure don't get to lock it. Applause rolled through the group. It wasn't wild, just solid like a pressure valve finally opening. A kid near my knee tugged my sleeve. "So they can't lock your driveway anymore?" he asked. "No," I said, "and they can't lock this road either." He grinned and bolted back toward the grill. Cars still moved up and down the hill, slower now, like everyone understood they were guests, not rulers. Nobody touched the sign. I walked over and laid a hand on the metal post. I could feel the faint vibration of cars rolling past. Prop number 3, doing exactly what it was built to do. "I'm keeping it simple," I said to the neighbors nearest me. "Road stays open. No tolls, no stunts. If you live here or visit someone who does, you're welcome to use it. But if anybody tries to turn it into a weapon again, they'll meet the deed before they meet me." Jerry laughed. "Best security system I've ever heard." The hum of conversation rose again. Someone refilled the chip bowls. Briggs drifted back toward the food line, talking with a group of retirees. For a while, I just stood beside the permit sign and looked up the hill. Same asphalt, same curve, same clubhouse, different balance. Briggs rejoined me eventually, hands in his pockets. You know, he said guys at the diner keep saying the same thing. Finally, somebody didn't just complain. They pushed back, and they did it straight. I watched a car I recognized from the old board ease down the hill. The driver slowed at the sign, read it, then gave me a small, wary wave. I returned it. No need to keep swinging once the nail's flush. Finally, someone fought back lawfully, I said. The words felt simple, not dramatic. Just true. They hung in the air for a second and then seemed to settle over the road and the people eating and talking and not whispering anymore. The lights along Cedar Road brightened as the sun slid behind the ridge. Kids shouted. A song switched tracks with a soft click. The sign didn't move, didn't threaten. It just stood there, clear, firm, permanent enough. For the first time since Pamela's chain clanged shut on my driveway, the road felt honest. Not a stage for power plays. Not a trap. Just a way home that answered to the people who lived here and to the paper that finally said so. English, 108 words, 5 sentences. The last light of the evening hit the posted order on my Cedar Road sign, its seal glinting like a reminder of how close we came to losing our own boundaries. Around me, the community settled again, children running music low and neighbors laughing under the same string lights we hung after the hearing. Owning the road taught me something simple when systems slip. Someone has to steady the map, fix the line, and make it right. Justice isn't loud, it's steady. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.